Everyone thinks ADHD is a low dopamine problem, even though that is an issue. But after running thousands of different lab tests on my ADHD patients, I've come to find out that there's 10 bigger factors that are contributing to making your ADHD worse than just low dopamine. In fact, low dopamine is not part of the 10. And if you're only treating your low dopamine situation with stimulant medication and other sources, then you're missing the big picture and why you're not able to get your ADHD better, because you're not fixing these 10 things. The first one that really shocked me, and after looking at all our data, I was shocked to find out that this one in particular was a bigger issue that we saw was lower than what we saw common with people with having low dopamine levels. In fact, 66% of the people that we tested, we found that they were low in specifically serotonin. Now, I was surprised at first, but I realized, serotonin has a lot to do with a lot of symptoms that we experience with our ADHD. And the big ones are like low motivation, you can't get up in the morning, you don't have the drive to move forward, and that is probably due because your serotonin levels are low. Not necessarily because your dopamine levels are low, but serotonin. But also serotonin can impact memory, it can impact your mood. So it's really important to address this if this is the case. Now, if you don't want to have to write down everything I'm going to talk about, you can download my ADHD lab protocol guide that I run all these different labs and get the whole list. Do that in the description below. Now, the second thing that is making your ADHD worse is probably has to do with a very important amino acid that actually makes dopamine. So we think that by using a stimulant medication that can solve the problem, it can help. It definitely improves dopamine levels, but it isn't making the dopamine. So we should be thinking, okay, what makes dopamine? How can we help support that? That's what we really should be thinking about. And that's really what is making your ADHD worse. And that is an amino acid known as tyrosine. Now, after running lots of lab tests, about 52% of my patients tend to be low in tyrosine levels. If you tried tyrosine, you're like, well, it didn't work, probably because you weren't low in it. But there's a 52% chance that you might be low in it. And it can make a big difference because it's what makes dopamine, and therefore is going to help improve your ADHD symptoms instead of making them worse. Now, the third thing that can be making your ADHD worse is another neurotransmitter that helps with stress, your emotions, helps with drive and motivation and focus, and even memory, and that is norepinephrine. So norepinephrine, yes, can be helped with stimulant medication, but then again, it is only stimulating and helping increase those levels, but it isn't feeding norepinephrine. It's not improving those. And I found about 60% of the people that we tested was low in norepinephrine. So definitely a bigger issue than we saw with dopamine. Because with dopamine, it's about a 40% issue. Like all the people that we've tested, about 40% of the time, people were low in dopamine levels. Now, that's still a big number. Don't get me wrong. But like I said, 10 of these things tend to be more of an issue of making the ADHD symptoms worse. The fourth thing that's making your ADHD worse, and it's about like 95 to 96% of the people I've tested that have this issue, and that's the breakdown of norepinephrine, the neurotransmitter known as epinephrine. Epinephrine has a lot to regulate with stress, and you might think, what does that have to do with ADHD? If you have ADHD, you know anxiety and stress is a very common thing, and it's something that I experienced with my ADHD when I was younger. And if that's not managed, it just makes your ADHD worse. And so the medications aren't addressing epinephrine. So we have to support that through other different supplementation, other different treatments, other different protocols to help reducing your stress. So if this is not addressed, then you're missing a lot. And there's a very high likely chance, if you're watching this video, you probably also have low epinephrine levels. Now, the fifth one, this one is overlooked and not talked about at all. I feel like I'm like the only one that talks about this when it comes to talking about ADHD, but it is something that 90% of the people I test for have this issue. And that is an excitatory neurotransmitter known as phenylethylamine. This excitatory neurotransmitter helps us to be more motivated, driven, have our mood to be well and balanced, have better memory recall, and just have very good cognitive function throughout the day to have that clear mind. And so if this is low, and like I said, 90% of you probably watching this, if you have ADHD, probably are low in your phenylethylamine levels. And things you can use is different amino acids like D-L-phenylalanine that can help support that. Or you could also take straight up phenylethylamine to help supplement that to improve those levels. Now, the sixth one is a very common vitamin deficiency that I see amongst the ADHD community, especially adults, that I find that this is deficient. And it is probably the most important vitamin that is important for things like serotonin, dopamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine, all these different neurotransmitters that help with our ADHD to be having that focus and motivation. And that is vitamin B6, the activated form of vitamin B6 known as P5P. And about 60% of the people I've tested are low in vitamin B6. So you might want to supplement that. You might want to test for it to see if it's an issue. And that's why I highly recommend this. And the other one that's also a big one, which is number 7 of what's making your ADHD worse, is probably having low vitamin B12 levels. Now, vitamin B12 helps a lot with energy production. It does also help with mental health, focus, helps a lot with those areas. And if you're low in this could be also the reason why you're having issues with your ADHD. Now, like I said before, there's a lot of different labs to look at. In fact, there's even more in depth that I talk about. You can download that in the description below on my ADHD lab protocol that I use with all my patients and clients. So you don't have to write this all down. You just get that in the description below. Now, this is not in any particular order. I just want to make that clear. I just kind of put these in this order for this reason. But the 8th one, about 92% of the people I've tested are low in this very specific thing. And I really do believe that this is not only impacting and making your ADHD worse, it's what's causing you having that mental burnout state, especially you adults with ADHD. If you're experiencing this is probably the most likely reason of why you're having this. And that's because you're dealing with something known as adrenal insufficiency syndrome, which just means you're not producing enough cortisol. Now, why is cortisol important? Cortisol is what gets us up in the morning. It's what gives us energy to have that focus and motivation and drive throughout the day. And it's what also helps regulate our stress levels. So if you're dealing with cortisol issues, you might want to have that checked because this is probably one of the biggest reasons that's causing your ADHD burnout state. Now, the 9th one, this one kind of surprised me. I didn't really think of much about it, but after running lots of tests, I found out that having low histamine can impact your ADHD a lot. You might have thought like, oh, histamine, it's where it has to do with allergies and getting red, itchy eyes, but histamine is also really important for building and modulating neurotransmitters. If it's low, you'll have issues of memory recall, you'll have issues with motivation, focus, and drive. So histamine is important to have a nice balance, and I've found that about 64% of the people I've tested had low histamine levels. And so it's very hard to build and modulate your different neurotransmitters if that is low. So you might want to get that checked and treated. Usually what I will use is L-histidine to help improve those levels, but that's something to definitely look into. Now, the 10th one, I'm going to talk about 2 because they're kind of like both an issue. They kind of are tied together, and these are different micronutrients. And so the 2 that I'm referring to, and they're both very important for also building and modulating things like dopamine, serotonin, GABA, norepinephrine, all those important different neurotransmitters for ADHD. And this is both zinc and also vitamin D. So I found that these are the 2 most common different micronutrients other than the B vitamins that I test for that are low and tend to be a bigger issue than just finding that low dopamine is an issue. And because both zinc and vitamin D can contribute to obviously symptoms of fatigue and also issues of brain fog, focus, but it's because these 2 are also important as cofactors, think of it as ingredients that help make the different neurotransmitters. So if you don't have this and you're low on this might be why your ADHD symptoms are worse. Now, to truly understand what is specifically off for you and how to eliminate your ADHD symptoms, then you should watch this video next, where I dive in deep, giving you case study examples of patients I've worked with, what I do. So you can watch this video next to eliminate your ADHD symptoms with this 3-step process. So watch this video next.